These Jewish prisoners revolted against the Nazis, killing their guards and escaping from a World War II death camp. During the lesser-known 1943 Sobibor uprising, several hundred Jews fled into the forests of Poland, where many were tracked down and shot. 58 Sobibor inmates survived the war. A photo of some of the Sobibor survivors who participated in the 1943 uprising. Surviving members of the Sobibor uprising in 1944. Leon Feldhandler, a leader of the revolt, is standing in the back row at far right. Azimut, Rafael M. Sosha, via Wikimedia Commons under CC by SA 4.0. Milan Sali. Milan Sali, Senior Associate Digital Editor, History. October 14, 2025. Get our newsletter. When Alexander Petrsky, a Jewish soldier in the Soviet army who'd been captured by the Nazis, arrived at Sobibor in German-occupied Poland in September 1943, he and his fellow prisoners of war quickly attracted the attention of the death camp's existing inmates. They knew that the war was going on but had never seen the men who fought in it, Petrsky later recalled. We were approached by men and women who made us understand that their wish was to get out of hell. In a matter of months, between the spring of 1942 and the fall of 1943, at least 167,000 Jews were killed at Sobibor. A relatively small campus, the Nazi death camp was situated in a remote part of Poland, albeit alongside a train track. The SS used trains to deport Jews from ghettos across Europe to Sobibor. Most would go straight from the freight cars to the gas chambers, but many others, particularly the old, the infirm and the sick, were shot in an open pit. Only a few were selected as workers who would be kept alive to support the camp's upkeep, enduring weeks or months of torturous hard labor until they, too, were killed. Alexander Petrsky, a leader of the 1943 Sobibor uprising. Alexander Petrsky, a leader of the 1943 Sobibor uprising, poetic bent via Wikimedia Commons under CC by SA 4.0. By the time Petrsky and the other Jewish soldiers joined the approximately 650 prisoners needed to keep the camp functioning, the Nazis had already begun winding down Sobibor's operations, possibly to convert it into an ammunition supply depot. The remaining Jews feared they would be murdered soon, just as their counterparts at the nearby killing center of Belzec had been after outliving their usefulness to the Nazi cause. A nascent resistance rightly saw the Soviet soldiers' military expertise as just what they needed. The underground appealed to Petrsky to devise a plan for an uprising. In a series of carefully orchestrated attacks on the afternoon of October 14, 1943, the conspirators killed around a dozen SS men and several non-German guards. More than 300 prisoners took advantage of the chaos to try to escape from the camp, though the majority were either murdered as they fled or later tracked down and shot. 82 years later, the Sobibor uprising is lesser known than many other acts of Jewish resistance. Yet the event played a significant role in Holocaust history. Without the uprising, there would have been no survivors, no one to testify to what happened at Sobibor, wrote survivor Jules Shelvies in Sobibor, A History of a Nazi Death Camp. No court proceedings could have been started, and the crimes that were carried out in the strictest secrecy would never have been exposed. Of the roughly 170,000 Jews transported to Sobibor during World War II, only 58 survived until the conflict's end. Sobibor's establishment and operation as a Nazi killing center. Sobibor started operating as a Nazi death camp in April and May 1942. Alongside Belzec and Treblinka, it was one of 3 killing centers established as part of Operation Reinhard, a plan to systematically murder the Jews of German-occupied Poland. Did you know? Operation Reinhard and the Lidice Massacre. Operation Reinhard was named after Reinhard Heydrich, a high-ranking Nazi who was one of the central architects of the final solution. Czech resistance operatives assassinated Heydrich in the spring of 1942, prompting Adolf Hitler to retaliate by ordering the eradication of a Czech village called Lidice. The June 10, 1942, Lidice massacre claimed the lives of 340 residents. At concentration camps like Bergen-Belsen and Mauthausen, the Nazis forced prisoners to work under inhumane conditions that often resulted in death by starvation, disease, or exposure. At death camps, however, the vast majority of Jews were gassed to death or shot upon arrival, with only a small group of prisoners selected to remain alive as workers. These forced laborers, known as Arbeitschaftling, were typically young men and women with experience in fields vital to the maintenance of the camp, including carpentry and tailoring. As Herschel Zuckerman later testified, the SS, the Nazi police force that oversaw the camps, once asked a group of 100 men who'd arrived at Sobibor the previous day whether any of them could cook. My son and I volunteered, we remained alive, while the other 98 went to the gas chambers. Most of Sobibor's Arbeitschaftling lived in a part of the camp called Lager I, staffed by around 400 prisoners, including 100 women. Lager II contained the camp administration office and an undressing area for Jews en route to the gas chambers, while Lager III, which was closed off from the rest of the camp, held the gas chambers and mass graves. Contact between workers in Lager III and the rest of the camp was strictly prohibited to limit knowledge of the murders taking place there. The most conclusive evidence that something murderous was occurring in Lager III was the fact that nobody ever came out alive, wrote survivor Thomas Blatt, also known as Toivy, in Sobibor, The Forgotten Revolt. A Nazi commandant aided by a deputy oversaw Sobibor with support from a group of around 30 SS officers at any given time. An auxiliary police guard unit of 90 to 120 men, including former Soviet POWs, as well as Ukrainian and Polish civilians, also helped enforce Nazi rule. These guards were recruited from POW camps and broadly referred to as Ukrainians, despite hailing from all over the Soviet Union. Trained to be tough, merciless, and ruthless, they often surpassed their German instructors in cruelty, wrote Shelvies in his book. The Ukrainians followed each and every SS order without the slightest apparent hesitation. The shipwrecks from John Franklin's doomed Arctic expedition were exactly where the Inuits said they would be. A map of death camps in occupied Poland in 1942/map by Milan Sali, based on data from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. View of Sobibor in the summer of 1943. View of Sobibor in the summer of 1943, public domain via Wikimedia Commons. Planning the Sobibor Uprising. The October 1943 uprising represented the most ambitious escape attempt at Sobibor. But smaller groups of prisoners had previously tried to flee the camp, to varying degrees of success. In December 1942, a Jewish woman named Pizha Lieberman escaped with 2 Ukrainian guards but was betrayed by a local Polish man, who reported the fugitives to the police. In July 1943, several Jewish men from the Waldkommando, a forest detachment tasked with collecting firewood to burn corpses, murdered a guard and escaped into the woods. Knowing they would be punished for their fellow prisoners' disappearance, other members of the work crew fled, only to be gunned down or recaptured. We were summoned to witness their punishment, so that we should hear and be afraid, survivor Moshe Bahir testified. Before our eyes, the 11 men from the forest group were brought out to be executed. All the victims fell with the first salvo. One of them got up on his feet and they fired again. Even this shot didn't kill him. A third salvo of shots put an end to his life. In the aftermath of the executions, Bahir recalled, the mood in the camp was tense. Various rumors flew through the air. We felt that our end was rapidly approaching. It was against this backdrop that Petrsky and the other POWs arrived at Sobibor in late September 1943. Born in Kremenchuk, Ukraine, in 1909, Petrsky was captured by the Germans in 1941, during the Battle of Moscow. He managed to conceal his Jewish heritage from his captors until the following year, when he underwent a medical examination after a failed escape attempt and was revealed to be circumcised. I was locked up with other Jews in a place nicknamed the Jewish Cellar, where we spent 10 days in complete darkness, Petrsky later said. Upon arrival at Sobibor, Petrsky sought out SS officer Karl Frenzel to volunteer himself as a skilled worker. Frenzel selected 80 men to join the Arbeitschaftling, sending the rest to the gas chambers. Still wearing his Red Army jacket, Petrsky stood out as a natural leader, winning the confidence of both his fellow POWs and the Jewish prisoners. Leon Fellhendler, head of the camp's underground, arranged a meeting with Petrsky. Over the following days, the pair discussed the merits of different escape plans, rejecting proposals to dig a tunnel out of the camp or recruit the putzers, young boys who served as personal servants of the SS, to murder the Germans in their beds. Stanislav Smagner, a Sobibor survivor who joined up with partisan forces after his escape from the death camp. Stanislav Smagner, a Sobibor survivor who joined up with partisan forces after his escape from the death camp. Public domain via Wikimedia Commons. Leon Feldhendler in 1933. Leon Feldhendler in 1933. The resistance leader was fatally shot under unclear circumstances in April 1945. United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Our motto is one for all and all for one, Feldhendler reportedly told Petrovsky. Because if at roll call it turns out that some people have escaped, then the entire camp will almost certainly be liquidated, and we will all end up in Lager 3. We cannot take that risk. According to Blatt, who assisted with secondary tasks related to the uprising, the conspirators' final plan, in broad terms, called for killing as many Nazis and Ukrainians as possible within 1 hour, and then storming the main gate. The revolt would unfold in 3 phases. First, members of the underground with access to knives and axes would deliver these weapons to the men assigned to kill specific enemy officers. Then, the assassins would lure their targets to pre-selected spots and take them out as quietly as possible to avoid alerting the other guards. Other conspirators would cut the camp's telephone and telegraph cables, disrupting communication with the outside world. Finally, a capo, a prisoner appointed to a supervisory position by the Nazis, would blow an early whistle for roll call, giving the inmates an excuse to line up near the main gate without raising the suspicions of the guards in watchtowers. From there, the underground hoped that the rest of the prisoners would seize the moment and escape en masse,